Professor Melkote has researched and published extensively on a range of issues, including the role of communication in directed social change, participatory communication, diffusion of innovation, international communications, health communications, and communication pedagogy. And I think it's needless to mention that Professor's book, Theory and Practice for Empowerment and Social Justice, the third edition, is a core text for course on media and communication in directed social change in colleges around the world. Professor Melkote's current interest involves examining the role of media and communication in achieving social justice. His work in social change communication explores how globalization, economics, politics, and hegemonic discourse contribute to widening inequality gap between people in societies worldwide. It's an honor to have you with us, sir. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Melkote, sir. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to deliver the address today. I want to thank the organizers of this event at St. Paul's College for having made this occasion available, not just to me, but to everybody else. Looking at the title of this conference, I can see that it is extremely timely and important for the present time. And I did glance at the different topic discussions, and I'm sure that the delegates, the participants of this conference are going to learn a lot about the newest game changer in emerging technologies, which is AI, artificial intelligence. My address is going to be not technical, and I hope to introduce, or at least use my life journey, professional life journey, to sketch a path in terms of how technologies of communication in my own life have changed so much in the last 55, 60 years. When I was a student at Bangalore University in the 1970s, I got my master's in communication from Central College in Bangalore University. It was the first batch, I think, in India, in master's in communication research, under the leadership of Professor Epan. It was 1975, but in terms of the new communication technologies, it almost seems like so long ago, because it was a completely different world. We lived in an analog world those days. And the word digital was never used, because that was used by engineers in other departments, but we did not even know what was digital. So at that time, the media that was being promoted in development communication was mass communication. Radio and television were the two main vehicles that was being used by sources of communication to disseminate messages relating to communication and change. And books were written at that time by professors like Wilbur Schramm and Daniel Lerner and Everett Rogers about the wonders of mass communication and how it can take the development message to the far wide corners of the country, if not the world. Well, we have come a long way, and that was at the start of my academic career as a master's student. And looking over that today, you know, the whole scenario is so different. And so we, engaged with mass media, and that was the only game in town in the 70s and in the 80s. And so this kind of rapid proliferation of new technology of media and communication did not exist at that time. We continued to go with the analog media. Of course, other inventions came along, like the videotape, which created its own wave, and then, the CD. So those were going on. But as media for networking and for communication and broadcasting, the analog media was pretty much what we had. Even when I started my doctoral studies in the 1980s, there was none of this technology. The best technology I had in my office was an electric typewriter. And word processing, as we came to know later on in the 80s, was also did not exist. But then when I start looking back and I start reflecting on all the changes that have taken place, I've noticed that the innovations, as Professor Everett Rogers talked about in his book, Diffusion of Innovations, the innovations, they started happening faster and faster and faster. In other words, the time frame started to reduce. And I'm using my own life experience. In 1984, when I took up my first job as an assistant professor, um, the following year, I think it was 1985, I think, the head of the department informed all of us that we are all going to get our own uh, computer, uh, a laptop, not like laptop of today, but a whatever they call laptop those days, connected to the mainframe. And and then a year or two later, they told us that we can store data on our own floppy disk, and we were given 5 1/4 inch floppy disks, uh, where we the most that we could, I think, store on any one floppy disk was I cannot even remember now, was like 580 kilobytes. That's it. And then very quickly we moved to uh, smaller floppy disks, much smaller, and they could store 1.4 megs of, data, which we considered very large those days. If I were to go back and kind of do a very quick survey of what happened in the intervening years, okay, I would put 1990s as a happening decade. Lots of things happened and laid the foundation for the next 30 years. The 1990s, 1994 was a banner year. That was the year when the World Wide Web came into operation, WWW. This instantly changed our worlds because now we could send reams of documents all knitted together with this WWW. Suddenly, communication seemed so much easier than what it was before. Then there was a question of browsers. I remember the early days, we had so many browsers, Netscape, Mosaic, that I can instantly remember. Um, and I remember that the year 1995, the very next year, was another huge game changer, and that was the software Windows 95. And Windows 95 made possible for the first time Android machines able to point and click. See, so we were coming, I mean, another aspect that I would like you to keep observing is that the path to communication was getting more and more intuitive, trying to become more and more like our natural communication, you know. And so now I could interact with the machine with a mouse in my hand. I could point, I could click, you know, and I could deal with that machine in a more efficient and more effective way. Of course, I'm not talking about the Apple Macintosh computer that was already there, and that was uh, also a point and click. So a lot of changes were happening in the 1990s, and but more, but more was to come. And when we turned the century and came, you know, past 1999 into 2000, these technologies of information dissemination and collaboration increased significantly thanks to um, technologies such as the electronic mail. You know, suddenly I could communicate with anybody around the world who was connected to a computer with the help of my emails. It was still slow compared to today, but suddenly we found that communication was getting easier and easier. Another way to look at this journey of mine is that throughout human history, one of the biggest obstacles we human beings have faced is the tyranny of distance. And how can we conquer distance? And faster and faster. And notice in this journey I'm talking to you about, we are getting faster and faster and wider in who we can reach. And so throughout the 2000s, we had a proliferation of email, you know. But importantly, another point I would like to make is that in the 1990s, for the first time, we communicators were introduced to the digital world, or rather, digital communication. Because everything that we were doing after World Wide Web came and our click point and click was all thanks to digital. So the digital era had arrived in our academic institutions, at least in the US, to my knowledge, by the early 1990s. And this continued to get stronger and wider. There were many parts of the world where it was still developing, but progress was taking place. Towards the end of 2000, there was another big game changer, particularly when you look at our lives today and how we use media. And what was that? In 2007, we got the first iPhone, or rather Apple phone. Apple phone was released officially in 2007, and it unleashed another age of communication. Now, slowly but surely, it became possible for people to have in their possession smart machines that could do a lot of things. Literally, as you can see today, how the smartphones have taken over our lives, and we do almost everything with those little instruments that we carry in our bags and in our pockets. So the iPhone and later the Android phones took over starting 2010 and made networking, communication even easier and wider. So it was a glorious time, with the help of digital media. Finally, the humankind, we were, most of the humankind, we were delivered from the tyranny of elites in our society controlling communication, gatekeepers controlling. So now, at least technologically and theoretically, we had reached a stage where everybody could communicate with everybody else. All you needed was some simple technologies like a smartphone. You could access information at any time. You could send out information. You could store information. I mean, this was almost impossible to imagine even as late as the 1980s. So we had, theoretically at least, democratized the communication scene. And that initially, at least, we all agree that that is good. That's the way it should be. Communication, the ability to receive, the ability to send out, the ability to create, the ability to store and send out. This was a fundamental right of every human being that no authority may curb. But there were still some more kinks in the system, even in the 2010s, and that was the speed of communication. In order to have very effective communication, interactive communication, we need a lot of broad, bandwidth, or to use another word, we needed broadband communication to make that possible. And that, even as late as 2010, we didn't have such fast bandwidths as we have today, which hampered communication ability. If you looked at, every time I would come to India, which I come a few months every year, I would be looking at all these ads in Bangalore and other places about, oh, get this, server, and you will get 20 gigabytes, speed. Oh, 20 gigabytes. Oh, that was very, very fast. Then the following year I would come and there would be, network providers who would say, oh, subscribe to mine and it will provide you with 50 gigs. You can watch uninterrupted television, no buffering, no. And then a year or two later, I came and these people were providing 100 gigs. So you can see how with every passing year, the bandwidth was exponentially rising. And all of this made possible very effective communication. And then, of course, don't forget that after 2015, we started getting so many other inventions. Just take the social networks that we talk so much about today. Even as late as 2015, we didn't have this kind of robust and dynamic social networks that we have today. WhatsApp, just take WhatsApp. I mean, just take that one as an example and see how what a role it has played in us exchanging messages and bringing us together, right? So the cell phone smartphone combined with large bandwidth made possible truly for a democratized communication and information landscape. So, you know, but we all knew that this is not the end. Things are going to further change, and of course, none of us knew exactly how it's going to play out. And in our own lives, we saw the birth and the death of so many media, from videotapes to CDs to DVDs, you know. So today, our bandwidths are so fast that we don't have to own anything anymore. Everything is available to us online. You don't need to have a pile of CDs in your house to listen to music. You don't need DVDs, to watch good quality movies, you know. And that has happened in the last 5 years. Now, online has become a one-stop shop. Anything and everything is available online. You just go there and it will be available. Today, the mantra is among the consumers, I want, as far as communication and messages are concerned, I want what I want, where I want, and when I want. Okay? I want it now. And it is possible. It's possible. So that is the wonderful time that we are living. So large bandwidth and smart machines have made it possible for us to just pretty much live our lives online. Recently, just about 3 or 4 years ago, I my wife and I bought an electric car, and when I sat in the driver's seat, to my horror, I discovered that there was no CD player in the car. Uh, and I almost had a stroke. What am I going to do with all my CDs? I've got so much CDs, and how am I going to listen? You know, but the car was connected to the cloud, to the online, and to my pleasant surprise, I found I don't need my CDs anymore. Just dig a deep hole in my backyard and bury all the CDs there. For example, I went to YouTube Music on the dashboard of my car. I clicked on that. Then YouTube Music gave me all the music. I listened to a lot of South Indian Carnatic music, and I would test it by asking, uh, uh, you know, uh, play me a song from M.S. Subbulakshmi, Suprabhatam. Bang, it would come on. Oh, play me a song, this particular song from Maharajpuram Santanam in Raga so and so. Boom, it would come on. So, you know, this was a very interesting world. As Aldous Huxley said a long time ago, it's a brave new world. All right. And so that brings us to today, where we are. Even 2 years ago, did any of us talk about this thing called AI? This thing is so new, all right, but it's already taken over our lives. Artificial intelligence. It was in the making, and boom, it appeared right in front of us. One small company came up with Chat GPT, and then suddenly the bigger company said, oh, yeah, we also have our own versions, and they released and led to the birth of AI in the lives of people like us. Suddenly there was a new way, you know, of disseminating information, creating information. And I'm sure the conference that is being organized now is going to be very helpful in helping you to get introduced to all of the things that are possible with AI. And what I would like to, in the few minutes that I have, and I'm going to conclude, as the principal, Dr. Thomas, a point that he made was that AI is a double edged sword. You can do a lot of very good things, what you think is good, but it also has its darker side. Okay, so that is the challenge for all of us today. And we are already, even before AI, we have seen how all these different networks, all these social networks, we loved the freedom, loved the democracy of, having direct access to communication and sending out messages. But then we realized that if it is not exercised with responsibility, then it can be chaotic and it can be destructive. And so some of the issues we have been having, even before we got into Chat GPT, is how networks are spreading false information, completely or exaggerated information. Okay, and how we can not only broadcast ourselves and our hobbies and our likes, but we can also broadcast hate. And so with social networks, we are seeing networks where they're spreading hate of one group or one incident or one culture or whatever. Because it has become easy, because what has happened is the responsibility lies with me, and it is only as good as how responsible I am. So today, if you go to your WhatsApp, you will see all those forwards. 80% of those forwards are fake. Thank God that we also have Google. You can immediately Google and ask Google, is that story true? And Google will tell you that no, that's not true. So those are some of the challenges. And now comes AI, where it can do all of these things in a much more sophisticated way. All right. It can also do a lot of stuff that we don't have to worry anymore. So we start worrying about the new generation. Will they stop reading? Uh, will they stop writing? Because everything can be done for them. So I hope that in this conference, we communicators and society leaders can talk about constructive ways in which we can harness AI for a better society. So I'll leave you at that, and I wish the organizers all success at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that enlightening session. It's now time for some questions. Our curious participants have some questions for you. Um so they want to know what are there any ethical challenges associated with AI in media research and how we can address them?
Well, the field is just emerging. So at this point, ethical challenges, as I told you here today, responsibility in terms of, you know, truth, accuracy, balance. There was a time when all of this was done through curated communication by our journalists. If you read a newspaper or listened to a broadcast from a mainstream station, all of this was done for you by a curator. But now you have to curate yourself when you're sending outside. So if I were to say answer your question, I would apply the same ethical guidelines that we have used with our legacy media as communicators, as broadcasters, as journalists, we need to apply the same ethical considerations also with with the use of AI.
Thank you, sir. We have another question by Dr. Saida. How to tackle the problem of AI cutting down the jobs of human beings? Is it actually real? How do you prognosticate the state of media in the coming years?
Good question. But this is something that has been asked every time a brand new, iconic, game changer technology appeared on the scene. Okay. Um, and in fact, you have heard about the English word Luddites, people who don't like new technologies. Luddites have been around for 600 years, you know. When machines came long ago, a few hundred years ago, and started replacing uh, human, labor, many workers lost their jobs because the machines could do things faster, especially uniform work. It could do faster, and they started losing. And since the 1980s, my story, look at it, and it has led over the years for the elimination of so many jobs, so many jobs. Today, many of those jobs don't exist. What existed in the 1980s, 1990s, travel agents. I would always go to a travel agent when I had to plan a trip, and the travel agent had the ability to pull down information from here and from there and give me this connecting flight or that connecting thing. Today you don't need it. You can go online and you can do everything. So several jobs, that is not the only one, several jobs were lost during this time. So to come back to the present time, will jobs traditionally that are there go? Yes, they will. They will. That is the name of the game. But then new jobs will be created. So the old jobs are not necessary anymore because AI can do that much faster. But you will need new jobs, which means that this has to be accompanied by fresh training for new kinds of responsibilities and new kinds of jobs that are necessary for this new age. So old jobs, it's like saying, long time ago, before the coming of a motor car, you say, oh, what are we going to do with all the horses? We're going to lose all the horses. Yeah, we're going to lose all the horses. But, we will get something else. What are now questions, just a few years ago, we have been asking, we are going to get driverless cars. So what happens to all the hotels on the side where people stop to eat? What about petrol stations? What about, there are so many jobs that are on the line that will go away, but hopefully new jobs will come. So yes, in the short term there is going to be pain, but in the long, so we have to be planning for the long term. Education and training institutes also have to come up to train people for the new kinds of responsibilities we have. Because until we achieve singularity in artificial intelligence, which they say is going to happen by 2030, where machines can act independently of human beings, AI will need human beings. We are the ones who are producing all the information, which is then being fed, into machines, and they're learning. So as of now, these machines still have human masters, which means that there are new subjects, there are new topics that need to be learned and need to be mastered. And this conference is an excellent introduction to some of those areas. What do you mean by too much development? Who gets to decide what is too much development? What is development? So these are all very, highly padded words. I don't know whether you meant too much of wrong type of development, but again, I ask, who gets to say what is wrong? Because most of the time people are acting from their own vantage points that benefit them. So we don't know what is too much development. See, the problem is, and now I'm sorry, I have to go back to my development communication book. We look at history as a linear track where you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and we keep going like that in a linear fashion. Okay, and that at some point we will reach the end, and that is super development. That's what I was taught when I was a master's student. Underdeveloped countries must become developed, and then we were all given a path of how third world countries must become. And we were told, you do this, you do that, you do that, you do that, you'll keep developing, and then you'll reach one end. But now we realize there is no end. History does not stop. History keeps going on and on and on. So which means that there is nothing like too much development. So I would replace the word development with change. Development is a part of social change. Okay? And so as long as social change is not going to end, there will be innovations, there will be changes, both good and bad. And certainly we are not in a position to stop anything, even if we try to. All right, especially today with this highly democratized structure, it's almost impossible.